Welcome to the Kids with Big Emotions podcast. I'm your host, Andy Clark, and I have a guest with me today who we were at a conference. It was one of my first conferences back when we started doing things in person. I did the VIP night, and the next day at the conference, we're sitting in the VIP section. I ended up sitting beside her, and it was just, I think, meant to be. I think fascinatingly, we had these cards put under our seats that both of us had tears when we opened these cards going, wow, each was meant for us. And Amy spoke that day as well on stage. And I was like, oh, I need to have Amy on my podcast. She needs to speak with you, to the parents out here, and help you as well as helping with your kids. So, Amy, I am going to let everybody hear from you. I do want everybody to know as well that you have done 2 TED Talks and you have so much experience behind you that I know we can't get to everything in this introduction. So let everybody know who you are.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. And I felt the same way, that we were aligned. And I'm so grateful that you were sitting beside me in that event as well. I am an executive life coach. I support the busy, high level professionals who are juggling the family and the career. I call it the struggle with the juggle, and aiming to help people feel aligned and awesome every day in the actions they're taking with their family or at work, getting rid of the mind clutter and the garbage that holds us back from living the life that we really desire. I am trained in timeline therapy, in neurolinguistic programming, and hypnosis, as well as a number of different certifications. But what I really love doing is seeing those light bulb moments with individuals when they realize that they are enough and they have the answers already inside of them to take the actions forward into their life.
Yeah. Okay. So they are enough.
Yes.
That's huge. And maybe let's make that the theme today, is that they are enough.
Mhm.
So you're a mom.
Yes.
Well, how many kids? Is it
I've
3?
got 3 amazing kids, yes.
Yes. And how, I mean, just being enough to 3 kids and running your business and doing all of these things. I mean, it's not easy. Let's first start with a lot with your clients too. What are the thoughts that go on in their minds of having these kids, having these careers, trying to do all of these things? What are the thoughts that you hear often? What are the things you often hear them say?
I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not good enough
Mm.
at my job. I'm not smart enough. I'm messing my kids up. I'm a horrible parent. I don't know why I'm still kept around at my job. I feel overwhelmed every day by the stress at home. My kid blew up at me this morning, and then I blew up at my kid, and then I go to work and I blow up at the people around me. I mean, pretty common statements.
Okay. You just said that's very common. And you and I know this because we work with people all of the time who are coming to us thinking they are the only ones thinking this.
Mhm.
So, in this moment, what can we say and tell these people to let them know that that list that you rhymed off is not just them? What can you say to them right now?
I would invite people to recognize that we all have way more in common than we think. And I actually believe it's the negative inner critic that is screaming at the top of their lungs, feeding them this information that you're alone, you're the only one, how horrible are you? I believe it's the negative inner critic yelling this into our ear because it wants us to believe that we are the only ones, so we don't access the support and the community and the positivity that can come with recognizing, wait a second, the mom who's sitting 2 seats down from me at the school concert also had a crappy morning. She may not look like it, but like we all walking into the school gym for that presentation, all of us can relate to moments of challenge as parents. All of us can
Right.
relate to this,
And
but some
okay.
people don't show it.
Yes. So, okay, a couple of things. I need to be writing down things while you're talking so I don't forget about this. So, the one thing you just said to all of us, you have all of these tools. You teach other these people and you have these moments,
Yep.
right? So important. Yes. It's just life can't be perfect all the time. And for some reason, we are led to believe that normal is when your kids behave. Normal is when everything goes smoothly, and we assume that every neighbor beside us, that every morning everybody is going smoothly, everything's fine, everyone got out the door okay, everybody got to everything okay, everybody's happy. That's kind of what we're fed as being the normal. What does normal actually look like?
Normal looks like the chaos.
Yeah.
Not normal looks like the chaos, the frustration, the moments of joy, the moments of pain, like normal is all of the things we believe not to be normal.
Yeah, that's so true, right? That's exactly it. Normal is almost the opposite of what we think normal should be.
Yeah.
Normal is pretty much the opposite of what we are brought up to believe what normal should be. And I'm going to say, so me as being like, before working with kids, I was a burnout coach.
Mm.
And it used to baffle me at the start as to what people's normal was, as to how much it was okay to push themselves, how much pressure it was okay to put on themselves before they felt that it was too much to actually come for help. Like, people only came to me with burnout usually once they were having medical or health issues, once they could not work anymore, once they really could not be parenting day in and day out, like they could not make it through their days. That's when they came to me often. And when we backed up 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, they started realizing that that normal was not in their minds, is not what normal really should be and feels like.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say and what I've seen around this topic of burnout, the opportunity is for individuals to notice, how am I feeling in this moment? And I think that's the reason why people go 5, 10, and beyond years in this state of exhaustion and go, 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 because we're not tapping into the inner knowing that this state of being every single day is not healthy and helpful. It might get you through the day, but that's the mindset of, wishing for the weekends. And I just have to get through it. I said this, a coaching client of mine said the words, well, I'm just trying to get through it. And I said, what if you were to reframe that thinking to what you get to do? What do you get to do today that feels a little bit better? It doesn't have to be absolute joy. That can be a big jump for people, right? Or absolute peace and calm can be a big jump from someone who's living in a state of burnout and chaos. But what is something that's a little bit better of a feeling that you could focus on, that you get to experience? So you get to experience the moment. I walked into my daughter's room this morning and she was still asleep, and I get to experience that moment of just like noticing the peacefulness on her face before the possible chaos
Right.
ensues.
And so, what we're saying too is a lot of people as well, I think, sorry, I'm putting words into people's mouths, and that's not correct. What I observe as well is that quite often it is hard to take that step to go for help because we're worried that two things. One, will be judged for you aren't being a good parent, that the voices in our mind will be validated, that you aren't good at your job. Or the other one as well is they're worried that they may be told that they can't do both. You can't have a career and have kids. And there's those fears as well that if I start diving into this and I start trying to figure out ways to solve this, I might have to give up my career.
Is that what you've seen? I'm very curious.
I've heard, yeah, once I start diving in with people and stuff too, and you start talking to them and you ask these questions too, like, because I know you dive deep with your clients and ask questions people haven't asked.
Mhm.
And you may, I've asked, like, did you ever have that fear that, and I think too, because I've worked with first responders, many of them fear that if they started trying to get out of burnout, that they'd have to give up their job. I know that is a fear for sure for many responders, that it actually prompted me to start asking other people as well. And when I ask other people, they're like, well, I don't know if it's possible to do both.
That's an interesting perspective because with the clients that I see, certainly there are some people that have that concern that it might mean that I can't do both. But I actually run into more often people not realizing that things could be better because
Mhm.
they're so in the mode of being in the mode. And the you and I are very reflective people. That is not the case across the board. There is an opportunity for some growth in the reflection of how am I feeling? And even something as simple as that question has rocked many people sitting across from me that they never even considered to stop and think about that question in the middle of an argument with the child or a situation at work. They're just operating a bit on autopilot from previous experiences and how they've always done it. So the idea that things could be better hasn't either come into their awareness, or as you're saying, the change, there's a fear of change, and because they don't know the how of it, they stay in the path forward that they're already walking.
Yeah. So for anybody listening to this, let's get them to think about that for a second. Is have you ever thought, how did you phrase that again? That things could be better or what it would look
Mhm.
like to be better.
Yeah.
That's how you phrase it?
And a little bit better. Like, again,
Mhm.
it's when I ask people to choose a better feeling thought, and we're going from every day absolutely sucks to the crazy jump would be my life is absolutely perfect and happy every single second of the day. Obviously, that's like so far of a jump that they can't even comprehend that as the possibility. But a better feeling thought on every day sucks could be, I'm looking for a small positive moment today. It's a small jump in thinking to a better feeling thought.
Yeah. Changing it to having that question to yourself every day of what's one thing good that happened today.
Mhm.
So you start noticing the good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that steps you're talking about as well. That's where I have what I call like a learning ladder,
Mhm.
where our goal is that top, but we need to make sure that the steps on the ladder are we're able to actually climb up and that there's not rungs missing on that ladder. So if we can't think of that answer, we can't think, well, we need to bring that smaller, as we're saying, like that step. And that's the things with our kids as well, is we want to get to that time where we can easily get out of the house in the morning. So what's one thing that we can do to help to make that a little easier? It doesn't mean we're going to get out of the house on time. It means that we might get out 30 seconds easier, or we might get out with like a little less frustration
Yeah.
and still not necessarily be on time. Like, how can we do that? Where is that step in the ladder that we can actually climb onto?
So in our house, for myself, our third is highly sensitive and highly emotional. I'm an emotional person, so I can absolutely understand her experience. There's some mornings where Usually she wakes up herself. Sometimes I have to go and wake her up. But there's some mornings when she comes out of her door, and you're like, "Oh man, this is not going to be a great," like, just by the energy that is coming off of her, she's already decided that it's going to be not a good morning for whatever reason. Stomping, and this impacts the entire house. So one of the things that I've personally done to help not, I call it getting on the bus with her negative emotions, to help me not get on that bus, is to continue to check myself, that her negativity, her moment, her experience doesn't need to be something I put on as a coat. It doesn't need to be something that I own and then spit back out at her. We'll have a far more productive time together if I can aim to stay in check of my emotions and give myself the self coaching in the moment to say, she's going through something. How can I show up to be empathetic to that? This isn't about me, because sometimes we make stuff about us that has nothing to do with us. This isn't about me. And if I can stay in that state, the longer I can stay in that state, the more compassionate I am to her. And I'm able to diffuse a little bit of the negativity and the frustration and stress by not getting on the bus and starting the yelling match or the freaking out. And listen, I'm not perfect. I absolutely have gotten on the bus. That's how I learned to not get on the bus now, because I've gotten on the bus too many times and I'm like, this isn't working. So the act is being as present as possible, and also knowing that she actually feels better when we have hugs. So even though it might delay the processes, I take a couple of moments to have a bigger hug or a longer hug to tell her that I love her and it will be okay, or whatever the thing. And their reaction is their reaction, but what are we choosing to do as the parent in those moments? And starting earlier where possible, giving them the time feedback ahead of time. We have 30 more minutes, letting them have those cues. Those are things that have helped me.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard. I know I'm highly sensitive. I take in other people's energies. My kids do as well. So it can be where everybody gets on the bus when everybody's pulling in these energies, and we have to learn to be able to block those energies or be able to separate them. That's where it'll be like I have to stop myself sometimes and go, okay, before I walked into this room, how was I feeling? Like, I wasn't frustrated. I wasn't feeling stressed. As soon as I walked into this room, into this person's energy, into their energy field, I'm like, oh yeah, then I really felt it. And it takes me sometimes asking myself questions to find out, was I feeling this before I was around this person or in that room? And if not, like, oh, this is their energy. And then it's learning how to block that energy. And sometimes, like, I will be interviewing a friend of mine who deals with gemstones. That's helped me hugely
Mm.
in being able to do that. And one of my sons wears them. Of course, my highly sensitive one will not, because it's not scientifically proven. And I'm forcing something that's not scientifically proven on him in his mind. And so, but we come up with different ways and strategies and tools. Sometimes it's breathing. Sometimes it's shaking myself out. Sometimes it's just going into the other room and breathing for a second and then coming back in. There's so many different tools that we have to figure out on which day is going to work for us to manage that and separate it and realize it's not our energy. It's not personal. It's not easy.
No.
It's not. Yeah.
The hardest job on the planet, right?
Right? It so is. So is, especially when we are their safe space
Mhm.
and everything implodes on us because we are their safe space. It's hard to be the punching bag at times when most of the time we may realize and understand that it's not personal. It's not us. It's everything that went on in the day. And it's because they trust us that this is happening. It's still sometimes hard to stay
For sure.
calm when we've had a day or we're struggling and things are going on as well.
Well, and I think, like, if I would add to that, the layer is whether or not we have healed and dealt with the triggers that are causing us to take it into ourselves, to take it and make it mean something about ourselves. So, someone saying, your child saying to you, "Oh, you're so stupid." Well, if you believe that you are, in fact, stupid, that would possibly be a trigger that then sets off a cascade of responses and emotions. And that's our opportunity as, honestly, slightly more evolved from our child. We're all growing up together. We are just all on a journey of growing up together, right? And so you're further along on the journey. You have some slightly more wisdom, and whether or not you've taken some time to work through some of these limiting decisions and negative emotions. That's one of the things that I love to do with parents, is help them get rid of the things that are causing them to be triggered, so that they have a clear channel to show up for their families and their workplaces.
Yeah. It dives into so many different questions on my end that I'm thinking, which one should we dive into? So, in helping a parent so let's take a parent who hasn't learned the tools and skills yet to be able to stay calm yet. How would you start with that parent?
The beginning of any experience is the individual, the parent, has to have the desire and willingness to improve this situation. So they have to want it to be better. They have to be willing to try new things and or bring back other things, that I'm using air quotes here, that they may have tried in the past that for whatever reason did or didn't work as well in their minds. But they have to have the desire and the willingness to take the steps to learn the new behavior, and to see it through the lens of, it's a behavior that I want to and I can improve. I can always hold the space of belief for the person that it's possible and that they can do it, and have the tools and strategies to help them get there. But they have to have the desire and the willingness to follow the instructions, to follow the steps, to do the behaviors in a new way, even though it's probably going to be pretty comfortable. So that's where I would start. Uncomfortable. So that's where I would start.
Yeah. And that is it. We always have to want to do the work in order to be able to do the work.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with kids too. So when we've got kids that are sensitive, that are melting down, that are having these big behaviors, and as parents, we feel like others are judging us when our child is having a meltdown in public. How would you support that parent?
Honestly, I make it my mission to go up to those people while it's happening, to say, "I get it. I've been there. You're doing awesome."
I do that.
That's like the self coaching that I would encourage them to be saying to themselves. These people get it. They've been there, and I'm doing awesome. And quite honestly, you as a human giving energy and space to the concern of someone else's judgment that has no impact on your life is taking away your precious life energy that you could be using to soothe your heart, to show compassion to yourself. In the moment of, "Oh, what is that woman thinking?" Actually pausing and saying, "She probably has 3 kids at home and she's been through this 100 more times than me. And that's why she's giving me that smile and that nod, because she is telling me without words, I get it. I've been there. You're doing awesome." That's my new t-shirt I'm gonna make.
Right? Oh man. I would love that too. Cause this is my thing is everybody is always doing the best that they can.
Yes.
And it was interesting. It was a Brene Brown. I don't even know when or where I listened to it, if it was her pot, what it was. It was on one of her pieces that she put out. And it was this story about how she came and she was judging somebody because of how they were acting and stuff. And somebody said they're doing the best that they can. And I remember this was years and years ago, and it had me stop and think, oh, I started really looking around in my environment, and I had grown up in a family that was very organized, very timely, very like everything's on par, and there was judgment for anybody that wasn't. And once I started really looking at everybody and thinking, are they doing the best they can? And learning, well, what tools does this person have? What was their story growing up? Like what tools were they even given as a child? What limiting beliefs do they have in themselves? What support systems were they ever given or brought up with? Like, do they build walls up and not let people in to help them? Are they trying to do everything on their own? Are they doing the best that they can with the skills that they have? And I've not and since I've really turned that chapter, I've really see that every single person is with the tools they have, with the story that they have. And the more that I do work with people with traumas, with all of those things too, you just everybody is doing the best that they can with the tools that they have.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. Everyone is doing the best they can. And when we look at the fear of judgment of others, how much are we judging? How much are we judging others?
Mhm.
Right? Is there a place of, as you're saying, being more compassionate and empathetic to the reality that we don't know all of the bits and pieces that comes with that human. Imagine if we carried around these giant, I imagine like the sack that Santa carries, imagine we carried a sack of all the things with us that people could actually see. This is the reason why my kid has a runny nose and there's green boogers coming out. This is the reason why I haven't wiped their face.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we don't see the sack of all the extra baggage and all the reasons and all the things that they didn't have the opportunity to. All We don't see that. We just have either the opportunity to make a judgment or to lead with compassion and empathy in that moment, to realize, as you're saying, people are doing the best they can with what.
Yeah. And when we think about what you had said as well, we do judge ourselves and we judge others, and us giving us the compassion as well. So, like what you had said earlier was that you, with all of these tools, still struggle and have days where you could be judging yourself because you have these tools and you still yelled at your child. I'm saying this for me too. Like I still like yell at my child, or I still like am not handling it the way that I know that I should be with all the tools that I have. I could even be judging myself during those moments.
Mhm.
We always have these opportunities where we could be judging ourselves, or we could stop and think as to how well we have been doing and are doing with all of the tools that we have in our bag up to that moment, and stop and think, oh, wow. Okay, so I do have these tools. I just did this. What could I do to support myself better in that moment? And give ourselves that love, kindness, empathy that you're talking about in order for us to maybe be able to handle that situation a little bit better in the past without shaming, blaming, or judging ourselves for how we did just handle it now.
Yes. And adding in there the idea that, maybe depending on the age of your kids, but mine are 10, 14, and almost 16, holy moly. And we actually get to role model a very positive behavior of recognition that we're not perfect. There's no such thing. And I frequently say to my kids, I am 100% still learning here. And what I just said was not who I want to be or how I want to show up. I apologize. I own it. What I actually want to do here is XYZ. And it's okay for us to make mistakes. And I know that this was a mistake. And even as adults, as parents, I'm going to make mistakes. I say these things frequently because I want to be part of the role modeling for the next generation who will eventually become parents, that we're not perfect and mistakes are real, and there is a blessing that comes from these moments of learning when we take the pause to notice there is an opportunity to learn and aim to do better next time, and put strategies in place so that next time the new choice is made. It's part of what I do when I am having coaching conversations, is to say, okay, well, if you want the next time to not be where you explode, how will you remember these 5 strategies? Number one, that you're going to take 3 deep breaths, or you're going to step to the side and face a different way, and you're going to say, I'm doing a great job, I'm doing the best I can, like whatever the steps are that we've designed for that person. How are you going to remember to do that in the moment? And breaking down this idea that there sometimes is a common space in the places where we're having these experiences. And I'm thinking of times with our kids. So outside of my daughter's room or inside her room, and in the kitchen would be where my moments of learning happen the most. Okay. And so, what would the strategy be to help remind you this is how you now want to show up? It might be a picture of a heart that you've just on the wall near that bedroom or in the kitchen. And when you see the heart, it's reminding you, okay, I want to lead from my heart. I want to be compassionate. I get to breathe. I get to say these things. Like, how are you going to remind yourself that this is the new behavior you want to have in those moments?
Yeah. And I think it's so important for us to think that it's where with kids, quite often there's these steps that people tell you, oh, get them to breathe, get them to do this, like all the strategy, like you said, like you, whatever the things are that you've worked out with that client, whatever a parent is taught, these are the strategies to de-escalate your child in the moment. And we need to stop and think about, okay, how hard is it for us to do with us having that prefrontal cortex in our brain, that part of our brain that is actually developed, that has more abilities and skills to be able to do that. And it's hard for us as adults to remember that as you're saying, that you're putting like a heart or some sort of a marker in that spot, in that room, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, wherever it is that you find that you struggle the most, to help to give you those cues to do it. And still, it's a struggle sometimes when you're learning it to start implementing those cues and do it, that it is harder for our kids because that part of their brain isn't even developed. So I think as well, taking that step back and taking that lens and thinking about how hard it is for us, it is harder for our kids, will give us a little more grace too when we're expecting our kids to do it and we're struggling to do it.
Well, and I think you said an interesting word there of expecting. I mean, I realized with our middle, she was still pretty little, but my expectations of her were ridiculous. And one day, I don't even know how I had the new awareness, but I was like, what am I doing? Like, I think she was 5 and I had expectations of her behaving as like a 15-year-old, a well-behaved 15-year-old, by the way. And that one awareness, that one shift of thinking that I was putting these expectations on her that were so unrealistic and unproductive and unhelpful, helped me to then start acting in a new way of like really seeing her where she is at, and she is 5, and having these expectations of her behaving in a far different manner at that age was not helping anybody. It certainly wasn't helping our situation and our relationship. So being present with where and the age and stage that my kids have been at has definitely made a difference for how I show up and behave.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I just did part of one of the episodes that I just recorded, solo episodes, was also talking about traumas and stuff too. And with traumas in kids as well, like we have to start thinking about if it's too much, too soon, too fast, or too long. I think that's the fourth one. But when things are too much for somebody, then that's where we can start getting meltdowns, behaviors, and struggles in kids. And that's their way of telling us that they're not ready for what we're trying to put on them. And this is where we struggle as a society, I believe, is that in schools, we expect that all kids of this grade, each grade, they should all be at the same level as far as their behaviors go, the same level academically, the same interests, the same way of expressing themselves, the same way of learning. And so you might have a kid that academically can actually do the work, but the way that they're being asked to get that out of their brain or to do it out of their brain's not able to do. Either the kid, that could be a just they're at a different stage of understanding and learning that yet, or their brain learns and does things in a different way. And so I just feel that as we're learning and growing, and I was thinking about this today, just about the internet and how new it is and all the information that's available at our fingertips to learn and do these things, the ways that kids' brains now are able to take in and compute and learn and do different things, and they can dive down these rabbit holes of their interests that we weren't able to do when we were younger.
Mhm.
And so we are seeing more differences in these kids now with these stages. I believe that those stages are more, the gaps in them with different kids is showing more because there's a lot more available to them to grow and the ways that they grow that they're pulled to. And then there's ways as well that they might be left behind because other kids are getting more advanced in certain things. And so you'll find a kid has superpowers in one things and struggles in another, and we're expecting them all to be the same.
Yeah, none of us are the same.
No. And
The
that's
word expectation. I mean, yeah.
right. This is the thing is adults are all different. Like my friends are different ages, different interests. Like I get with people with similar interests and similar ways that my brain thinks or like to go down the same rabbit holes with me and of that same, like I end up getting the circle, but the age is all different. And how each of them also computes and takes in information is different. And I find that as kids, we have these expectations. And I believe that is what is causing as well a lot of big emotions is that the discrepancies are, the gap is widening because of how amazing the informational system is available to everybody now. And that gap's widening, but the expectation is the same that they should all develop the same in all levels. Yeah, I just, yeah. So it just ties into everything you've been saying as well, that it's these pressures, a lot of societal pressures. There's a lot of them that we, because of how we're raised, and things have changed a lot in how kids are being raised now. And we have to shift so many different beliefs that have been in us as well.
That's could be part of where challenges are coming up because the beliefs are not aligned to the new experience.
Yeah, and they're just changing. It's just
Mhm.
evolving. It's not like the beliefs were wrong because those beliefs really worked when we were younger and where we were at and where technology was at. It's not that they were wrong. It's that we're evolving. And so the beliefs have to evolve. That's all.
Yeah, they get to.
Interesting. All right. I know we could go down so many rabbit holes here, but we do need to be cognizant of the time for everybody. So, if there's one thing, what do you believe or you feel in you that our audience needs to hear, or like the parents need to, or anything about them as parents or kids? What do you feel that we haven't covered that they need to know?
I would say if there's a parent listening who resonates with the statement, I'm not enough, and believes that, there is an opportunity to repair that relationship with yourself, to strengthen the knowing, because I believe it's a knowing that we are enough. And I come back to it from the place of the moment you saw that baby for the very first time, there wasn't a question of them being enough. They were absolutely enough from that very first second. And reconnecting to that knowing, and so I have done a lot of work around this for myself, and the having my own baby picture as a reminder around me to connect to I was enough then and I am enough now. And if we can know this more strongly, believe it, live it, and bring that into each day, we show up as a different version of ourselves at work. We show up as a different version as a parent, and we can role model when we hear the younger people, the little people in our life starting to say these kinds of things like I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, to help them reconnect back to that they are enough, they are worthy of everything. And the goal being that I really believe that when more people lean into that knowing, we can be more compassionate and loving and empathetic to ourselves and others in our growth journey, that things are not always perfect, but at the end of it all, it's not a question of whether or not you're enough. You are enough, and I want every single person to like take the opportunity to repair and reconnect with that knowing.
Yeah, you are enough. Absolutely. So I think as well, so everybody can connect with you. We're going to be putting your links in your show note, but you also have a mindset workbook that you have a link for that's in the show notes. Do you mind filling us in a little bit about what your mindset workbook is?
Yeah, so I believe there are a number of different mind traps, thinking traps that hold us back from a lot of joy in our lives. So the idea of using words like they will think XYZ, right? The judgment question is a mind reading thinking trap. And so it's my belief that when we become more aware of the language we're using, which is an indicator of the thoughts we're thinking, we can take steps and actions to shift the words we're using out of our mouth and the thoughts that we're thinking, and knowing that the thoughts we're thinking impacts the feelings that we're feeling, that impacts the actions we take and the results we experience. So if we want to have better results in our lives, we start with the thoughts we're thinking and the words we're saying out loud, and notice the difference that it makes.
Nice. So this workbook you're giving to everybody
Yeah.
that's listening to this, and that's going to help them with those shifts that we've been speaking of a lot throughout this episode. So anybody who is wanting to start working on those mindset shifts, the link is in the show notes below. So definitely go into that. Amy also has a podcast. She has some TED Talks as well. So we'll put some of those links in the show notes. If you want to know more, you can message Amy. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have any questions, if you would like to work with me as well, we have our support circle, which is open now. And it's where you are not going to feel alone. It's where a lot of parents are like you with kids with big emotions can join in. And that link as well is in the show notes. So we will see you in the next episode.